No, I'm first or you can't have it.
No. All right.
Me
So
or nothing.
it says it's connecting the live video. I'm just going to give it a second to do that, and I'm going to let that Instagram post just be wrong because it is.
Yep.
Okay. See, I don't know if I'm supposed to hit go live. So I'll just hit go live. Why not? All right. So I'm going to do my best to jump around sufficiently during this to try
Yep.
to get it to work.
Okay.
Um, yeah, but I'll try not to touch it too because that's not going to help me if I'm just constantly meddling with it.
Yep.
Let me find this post because now I have to look through. Look, I have Facebook on my off my phone. The app is off my phone, but I still have. I can look at it with Chrome. So, which I'm now checking as much as the app, so it really
Yeah, yeah.
defeats the purpose. So I'm gonna
Sure.
try to. Okay. Oh my God! Come on. So professional. So professional. See, if this was the app, it would just push my own post like right
Yeah,
in front
yeah.
of me.
Right.
All right. Well, so far at least the OBS doesn't look like it's locking up too bad. So
Mm-hmm.
that's encouraging. Where is this live broadcast though? That's what I want to know. All right. Well, feel like I've been poking around with that too much. So I'm going to leave it because we are rolling. So where are we? About 1 minute into the recording. Yep. Okay. What's going on with this? QuickTime is freezing.
Okay.
Great. All right. Well, OBS is
Perfect.
not. So awesome. Okay. Well, we're live, I think. Um, the counter's going. We're live. So that's
Sweet.
the way that is. Hey,
Yep.
everybody. Welcome to the HooperCast. Finally, episode 264, I think it is.
Wow.
We are climbing on up there.
Done a few of them.
Done a few of them, and we're not near done with them.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Dustin.
Hey, Hooper.
All right, so if you are listening live, watching live, then congratulations, I did it. And if you're listening, of course, on the podcast, you can participate in these live streams. We try to do the show every Monday night at a little after 9:30, 8:30 Central on Facebook.com/HooperCast. We've got social channels, Instagram, Twitter, and yeah, but we are on all the podcast platforms, so you can look for the show there. It's typically going to be cleaner, a little bit smoother, and better start stop for the show. But yeah, so there's the slate: iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever there are podcasts to be listened to. That's where we are.
The whole shebang.
The whole shebang, pretty much. Yeah, so I'm Connor, and that's Dustin, and we're talking about film news tonight because we had a whole
Yeah.
lot of it that piled up
Yeah.
that I thought was worth talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I just figured I would compile a list, and it's a long list, so we'll try to get to everything tonight. We may not, in which case, okay.
Yeah.
So, Dustin, I thought I would try to make these stories relate a little bit so that they had some semblance of a pre-produced show.
Sure.
So I'm looking first at, I want to open up here with this Damien Chazelle short film.
Okay.
So he's partnered with Apple, I think it is. Damien Chazelle is
Yes.
the
Yes.
director, for people who don't know off the cuff. Damien Chazelle is the director of films such as La La Land and Whiplash, which
Mm-hmm.
is great. I'm gonna stop QuickTime. It's I don't know. I don't trust it. It's probably hindering the recording of OBS.
Sure.
Yeah, what else he First Man, I think he just did with Ryan
Yep.
Gosling.
Yep.
What else did that guy direct?
It's actually relatively short, but
Yeah.
I think he directed those and shoot, there was another one, wasn't there? No, I guess not. I guess that's it.
No.
Whiplash, First Man,
Yeah,
La La Land.
he's
That's it.
he's definitely he's among the current crop of directors. He's very
Hmm.
I would say has pretty decent exposure and generally makes good films. And La La Land's not a bad film. It's just nothing too special.
Yeah.
In some ways. So, and Whiplash, I think we all liked. We all enjoyed
Yeah,
Whiplash.
I love Whiplash.
Very different from La La Land.
Sure.
Yeah. So anyway, Damien Chazelle shot this short film, and it caught my eye because I work in mobile video, and I'm especially sensitive to portrait mode being used, and and that's what he decided to make this film with, portrait video, which is, obviously portraits, that when you hold your phone up and not sideways for landscape, it's the opposite aspect ratio of
everything
film. Yeah. Of everything good that your eyes want.
Right.
So I'm not going to talk a bunch about the short film. I watched it. It's like 6 or 9 minutes. How long is this thing? It is short for how long is this thing? I thought I would say somewhere close to time.
So weirdly, I couldn't watch the whole thing. It made me sick. Like not like in a, like, this is disgusting, but in like a nauseous, like I felt nauseated. It's too claustrophobic.
Yeah.
So this is the look. Art is art, and at the end of the day, somebody may make this work in the future, right? But I hope not, because for me, it's so crooked. Because if you look like out into the world, your field of vision is pretty wide,
yeah,
right? And so to constrict it to like this narrow, like, vertical box is just so counterintuitive.
It sucks.
It made me nauseous. Yeah. So I couldn't get through it. It was too close. So I'm not going to say it can never happen, but I don't think this was a good first attempt. No. And I don't understand the point.
I was going to say the same thing. It seems like a gimmick, but I'm not sure what the gimmick is. I mean, it just says that released a short film shot entirely in vertical display on an iPhone, and I guess it was because it said something like it was shot with an app, to make it seem, I don't know. I mean, and I guess the idea is being like, here's how good iPhone footage can look.
Sure.
When it's
after it gets color timed and everything else.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like, maybe I'm freaking out because I'm having a personal reaction to it. But I remember like a couple years back, it was a thing to push portrait mode for social media marketing. And the idea being that people hold their phones that way, and they're scrolling down Facebook on their phones, and they'll come across a movie trailer, but the trailer is in landscape like it's supposed to be, but on their phone it's so small because it's in landscape on a portrait phone, and we should make trailers instead be portrait, landscape or port, whatever shit, whatever. Wrong is what we're gonna make it. Correct. And I remember thinking like, no, don't get people used to this, because before you know it, they're gonna be like, you know what? Years ago, I put a post out on Facebook, and I was like, who even bought full screen DVDs?
Right.
And a lot of people responded and said, I do, and I actually prefer. I was like, what?
Yeah,
and
my grandfather does that.
And I'm not a snob like that, but I guess I am, because I was like, how can you watch a movie that has the image cropped?
I don't think that makes you a snob. I think that it makes you a snob when you start talking about like super in-depth stuff. But the idea of wanting the image to be like, the idea of wanting to see the entire image is evil. Not snobbish. That's completely understandable.
Yeah.
The whole idea is full screen DVDs. They don't do this with Blu-rays, thank the Lord. But DVDs, at least in the early 2000s, they had the full screen and the widescreen version. The full screen version was a cropped image, because in order to fill the screen, you have to crop the sides out.
Yeah.
And then you have the unfortunate side effect that as televisions progressed and became widescreen, that then your full screen DVDs are actually pillar boxed.
Yeah.
So you're still like, because a lot of people are like, oh, I buy it full screen because it fills the screen. And I'm like, yeah, not anymore. You know what I mean? You bought a widescreen TV, so now you need your widescreen DVDs, but then they're going to be mad because if you film it in scope, you still get letterboxing, and it's like, that's just a part of it.
Yeah, I don't like it, and so whatever. Fine, it's a fun experiment. I sort of thinking like, why Damien Chazelle? Why couldn't it just be like a, you know,
Well,
why Damien Chazelle?
Well,
Uh,
you hit the nail on the head. It's a gimmick, and the only reason it doesn't add anything to the film. And they tried to film it. It's like, look, it's a tall building, so you need to see it. And I'm like, no, that's what a tilting tripod is for.
yeah,
Like you don't. And even then, like just back the camera up. You can get the whole thing in there. Use a
I
wide
know. There's
lens.
a whole lot of shots in there where I was like, this doesn't even lend itself solely to the portrait aspect ratio. Like
It doesn't add anything.
no, yeah, you're shooting. You've got stuff that's like, yeah. I mean, you wanted to show the whole floor or like a building, but it's like, but what about the negative space? What
Yeah,
about the negative space?
yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well, moving on. Speaking of cinematography, the next story I had was that Rachel Morrison is may not be able to come back for Black Panther 2. I'm sure you saw this story. Rachel Morrison was the cinematographer of Black Panther, which is a all around well made movie for Marvel. Look at me explaining to people what Black Panther is.
Right, right, right.
And but she's also a she made history because she was the first. Let me see, what film was it? Was it for Mudbound? I think it was for Mudbound that she was. Yeah. First female DP nominated for the Oscar for best cinematography, and it was for
Oh
Mudbound.
wow.
Yeah, but she is the cinematographer for Fruitvale Station, also for Ryan Coogler,
Yep.
Mudbound, Black Panther. So, she is.
All great movies, by the way.
Yes, and I actually no, I have not seen Mudbound.
It's very good. You probably will only want to watch it once, but it's good.
Got it. Okay. Well, so Rachel Morrison was talking to some outlet. This is on IndieWire, as was the last story. Actually, like half these articles are on IndieWire. It's a great website. I love IndieWire.
Sure.
But she was talking about how because of the pandemic and because of her currently directing a film, like her directorial debut, she's like, yeah. So depending on when we can get back to, she was I think 2 days into shooting. Sorry, what's the name of her movie? I want to name it. God, oh my God, Flint Strong is the name of the film, and
Okay.
I think they were 2 days into shooting out of about 41 days,
Mm.
and she was like, all right, so if depending on when we can get back, because Black Panther is supposed to be shooting like in February, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is crazy to think like, oh my God, like they've already got actors hired and
Yep.
like that's so cool. Like there's a script, like
Right.
people know the plot of the film.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yep.
And so it's kind of sucks to hear like, oh, she might not be able to be back for principal photography. Um, and it's not that huge of a story or anything. It sucks, and it just sort of reminds you like how interconnected careers are in
Yep.
Hollywood, and how easily it's disrupted by something like this because you're counting on one job to end as scheduled so you can hop on your next job and continue making a living and
Yep.
keeping your name and you're associated with as many projects as possible. And so it would suck, but it's for a good reason. I think the headline is supposed to be a little eye catching, like,
Hmm.
oh, why wouldn't she come back? It's like, well, because I'm
Right. Right.
directing a film, and
Yep.
so the good news, and this is going to offend some cinematographers, it doesn't matter too much to the general audience who shoots a movie. You're
Sure.
still following the director's vision, so that's first and foremost is what's going to guide
Hmm.
the cinematography. But
Yeah.
because she's so talented, especially with the awards associated with her name, I mean, it sucks, and it just sucks as her being, associated with the original project, and not coming back for it. So not the worst thing in the world, but a good problem to have. I'm too busy directing to come back and be someone else's DP.
Right.
So
Correct.
it makes me hope that her movie does well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, look, there will be some level of difference, between cinematographers, but you're right. They follow the direction of the director,
yeah,
and so probably the layperson isn't going to notice too much.
right. All right, let me see. Okay.
I will add this too, really quick before we move on. She did not work with Ryan Coogler on Creed, and I thought Creed was a very well shot film. The cinematographer for Creed is named Maurice Alberti,
Mm-hmm.
and who also was DP for The Wrestler. And yeah, she does good work. So, she might stand a chance at it.
Okay. Well, that'd be
Yeah,
good. I mean,
yeah, totally.
I'm excited for the film no matter what, and
Yeah,
there's, I wouldn't call the cinematography for Black Panther particularly memorable,
sure.
although, but I don't have an eye for it like that. There are people who can analyze cinematography all day long, and they're always
Mhm.
like, look at how intimate the shot design is. And of course, when it's explained to you, it's obvious. The only thing I
Yeah,
remember from Black Panther is that really cool twisting shot when Killmonger walks over to the throne and takes the throne,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they put the thing on an arm or something and turn the
yeah,
camera around. I thought that was super badass.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Speaking of super badass, I guess let's talk about. Um, all right. To touch on something previous that we did, um, I want to talk about this Matrix story.
Okay.
Um, So we talked a couple of weeks ago about death of the author and authorial intent and everything that that means. So go back and listen to that if you want to hear that whole discussion,
Hmm.
or Google it. This story is out of Yahoo Entertainment, and Lily Wachowski, um, one of the Wachowskis,
Hmm.
the filmmakers behind the Matrix trilogy, um, has they are transgendered women, and that's relevant because she came out and said that the original intention for the Matrix was about trans identity.
Hmm.
So the reason we bring this up, I'm not going to read the whole damn story. It's just that's the quote, and that's kind of what's going on with that. And I just thought it was relevant to our discussion. So I just want to remind people that film. Okay, so it does mean something that the maker of the thing says this is what it is. This is what
Yep.
it always was supposed to be.
Yep.
So there is that. But I'm not sure what I'm trying to say because I'm not sitting here going like,
I,
hey, it doesn't have to be that for you. But that is what I'm saying.
I think what you're trying to say is
This is a relevant example of death of the author that has nothing to do with the author tweeting controversial things in that
yes.
sense. Like when we talked about J.K. Rowling, it was she was saying something that people really didn't like, and then people
Hmm.
were trying to boycott the books. This is more directly applied to our conversation of this is what the director says the film is
Is the
about,
correct interpretation.
even if it never crossed my mind once while watching it,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
wouldn't for me.
Right. So yeah, obviously the director is saying this is what it means something.
Yeah.
But it does not mean everything. And I think at least that's where you and I kind of came down in that episode was it means something, but it doesn't mean everything.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't have to mean anything
Anything.
to you particularly. But it does mean something.
Yeah.
And just in the grand scheme of things. I would say a couple things. One is because of my life experience, because of my background, that probably would not have come into my mind as an interpretation for the film.
Yeah.
I took it as a very kind of base level, you know, sci-fi flick, right? Like it's what if the world as we know it is not quite the world as we know it, and there's another level
Yeah.
that's more real than this level. And you know what I mean, however you want to interpret this, that's completely up to you. I would say this. I would say that having heard that this was their intention, and going back, I have not gone back to rewatch it, but just kind of playing it back in my head, I can certainly see where that makes sense in the story. So I would say they probably did a successful job in putting that subtext in the film without overtly saying, "Hey, this is what this is about." Um,
Yeah.
and so I would say it's successful on that level. We've talked about sci-fi before as a metaphor, as an allegory. The Matrix is that. It would not have worked as well if it was about a trans character finding new identity. It would have been too on the nose, right? And I think probably in 2000 Hollywood wouldn't have made it. But having added that in as sort of this undercurrent, allowed the film to A, be made at all, and B, allows the film to be accessible to a great number of people, more than just people who have lived that experience, but also people who live completely separate experiences. And to them, the film becomes about something that they can relate to. So you and I, for instance, will probably relate to it on a different level.
Yeah.
It's not to say that the directors are wrong or that a transgender person who watches the film is wrong, and it's not to say that we're wrong. It's just to say that our interpretations of the film will be different,
Yeah.
and there is no one objective interpretation. Not even the directors.
Yeah.
It's all subjective.
It's as simple as saying, like, that's what the film was for me. That's what the film was. And that's the thing. Like, to me, authorial intent in this situation is not, and never should be, the director, writer, author, whoever, the author saying, this is what the thing is about, period, and nothing else.
Yeah.
It's the director saying, this is what the film was like. This is what the film was for me.
Mm-hmm.
This is what was fueling my passion behind this project.
Yeah.
And the fact that it works just purely as a sci-fi movie, not to mention late 90s, those movies, there's plenty of video essays out there about this, but those movies were, America in general was very, for the lack of a better word, bored at that time. There was not a lot of I don't think there was a whole lot of social unrest like there is today, It was a whole lot about how a lot of movies in the late 90s were about how boring corporate life is, and just how Fight Club is about that, Office Space. So all of that. So this was like, what if all the malaise you feel in your real life is because you're just a battery for machines? And you're like, what? And you have this whole premise of what the Matrix is. That's what the movie is about, and that's what it was about at the time. And of course, nobody could have known that these two guys were struggling with their gender identity during this whole thing, and that's the real reason that they wrote and made this trilogy. And they were able to pitch it to Warner Brothers and make a boatload of money off of it, and have a whole trilogy of blockbuster action films that changed filmmaking. Yeah. And it's kind of neat that you go back and go, oh, all that happened because of what they were struggling with on the inside, and they found a way to channel that into a sci-fi trilogy that resonated with millions of people. That's really cool.
Yeah, totally.
The only reason it's, to me, like, it comes out of nowhere, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. Obviously I can't say it's wrong because it's not my film. I didn't direct it. I didn't write it. How do I know it's wrong?
Sure.
The only thing that I remember was that, and they said this a few years ago, that the character of Switch in the film was named Switch because she was going to be, that character was originally, like when you met Switch, she was a man in the Matrix. And then when they got up with the Nebuchadnezzar, you found out that she was a woman.
Yeah.
And the whole idea that was supposed to be their touch, but even then they said they didn't want that. Warner Brothers didn't want that in the script, so we didn't expound upon those themes any further overtly. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it's like, that's an obvious plant though. Like that should be obvious to anybody. Like, the character's named Switch. Why is she named Switch?
Right.
She doesn't throw a switch. She doesn't, exactly. She's not ambidextrous. That's the reason. It's interesting. And they even cast, an actress with short hair, and like it all makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Going back that way.
Yep.
So that's just an interesting little tidbit, I thought.
Yeah.
And it might deepen the experience for for the Matrix for people. Okay, let's shift over, and as in general, I want to talk about Disney. We're going to move into the Disney block of the
Okay.
show.
Okay.
So, I want to talk about, oh boy. All right. So you said your Disney beef had nothing to do with Mulan or this 4K thing?
No, not well. Well, the 4K thing certainly adds to
All
it.
right, I'm gonna warm you up to this. I want to
Okay,
warm you
go
up to
ahead.
this with these tidbits, okay?
Go ahead.
So we'll get to the 4K story in a second, but Mulan, this is probably old at this point, but just to remind everybody what's going on, the remake of Mulan, long in development, was made,
Hmm.
marketed, everything was going to come out in March, and then it kept getting pushed back because of the coronavirus, and everyone was like, "Are they going to put it on Disney Plus?" And everyone was like, "No," because that's a lot of money wasted and they won't get it back, and what will they do? So finally they were like, okay, here's what's going to happen with Mulan. We're not going to get into theaters anytime soon. Here's the plan. Mulan is going on Disney Plus on September 4th, and you have to have the subscription to see it, but it's also going to cost $29.99 to, I think, keep at that point the film, but to rent it. And so this is significant, not because it's happening, not because it's Mulan, but because it sort of adds to the conversation of what would the price point of a VOD release be, especially if it's also a film that's in theaters. And so for Disney, it's $30, which other places it was 20. Like to rent The Invisible Man was $20 on iTunes.
Yeah.
So for Disney, it's 30 for a film
Yep.
like that on a
Yep.
service that not everyone has access to. Everyone can
Yep.
go onto iTunes,
Yep.
but you're paying, $6.95 and then $29.99.
Yeah.
So people have different reactions to that. Bob Chapek, the CEO of Disney, said this was all during the company's earnings call, that it was important to find new avenues of distribution during the pandemic, but this is not something that they're gonna keep doing. This is a one-off.
Yeah.
So
Or so they say.
or so they say, because there's Black Widow to consider, especially
Right.
if Mulan does well. So there's that piece of Disney Plus news.
Yeah.
Disney is also not, they are no longer, where the hell is this? Oh, there it is. This is on Slash Film. That last article was on Deadline, I think. Yep, Deadline. This from Disney Today. Disney may be, or Slash Film Today. Disney may be abandoning 4K physical releases of catalog titles, including the Fox movies, which is in favor of probably just beefing up streaming.
Yep.
So that's not sitting well with people either, because this is what a lot of people were afraid of when they bought Fox, was they're going to monopolize everything. And then, of course, you especially are protective of physical media as something that should always
Exist.
Yep. And so I want to get your take on those two things, plus your overall beef with Disney Plus, all in one.
Right. So Hooper, you and I have talked a little bit about this off mic.
Yeah.
So I won't go into too much detail, just so you don't have to sit through it again. But my beef with Disney Plus is simply that they are, it appears, choosing to be less than they could be. And there's a number of things that point to this, right? Like something like the Lizzie McGuire reboot that very famously, I guess, got canceled because they wanted to do things that were a little more age appropriate for Lizzie, who's 30. And that's not to say they wanted to do something that was, raunchy or whatever, but just age appropriate. And Disney kind of balked at that. And then you also have a huge, deep back catalog of titles that they could be releasing, not just Disney titles, but Disney also owns 20th Century Fox, and they also own Touchstone and Miramax, and they could release all of these films on Disney Plus that they're just not. And maybe that's part of what this walking away from physical media is so that they can maybe do that. But what's frustrating about it is, I paid for the year, so I have a whole year of Disney Plus. I'm not quite to the end of that year, and what's frustrating is, as far as new original content. Now, granted, we're supposed to have had a few shows that coronavirus ended or put on hold, but for that whole year.